So, greetings, comrades. Welcome to our TSG Saturday Unification session, where we do discuss the unification of Africa. Of late, we have been discussing various topics in relation to Africa unification. And today we are going to look at managing Africa resources. And Brother Usu will be starting that conversation and presentation by focusing on the youth as the greatest resource of Africa. And how do we manage those resources for the purpose of unification of Africa, liberation of Africa, and development of Africa. So welcome once again, and be ready for our conversation today. Feel free to share what you think. If you'll be watching this recording via the YouTube, if you're a member joining us now, feel free to raise your questions either on the chat, or once the presenter is done, you can also unmute yourself and raise your questions. I'm having also a short presentation that I'll share after Brother Usu shares this first part of the presentation. So once again, feel most welcome to Saida, welcome. Elder Sam, welcome. Brother Usu, welcome. And all those who will be joining us, feel most welcome. Back to you, Brother Usu. Please unmute yourself.
Okay. I think I like the way you introduce it. But that is my mind that for every society to make good use of our natural resources, I think it takes the human to actually harness all these things. And if we don't have that capacity, then it's a problem. And I quite remember today I was commenting somewhere on Facebook that Nkrumah taking over Ghana, the first thing and foremost thing he did was to proliferate education, build more schools. The Northern were neglected by the colonials. So Nkrumah had the responsibility to take schools to the north and also spread the rural areas in the south. And it did help because at the end of the day, the rest of Africa that were still under colonialism, they couldn't have that opportunity. So many people flocked to Ghana also just to attend school and to get themselves educated there. So I always look at foremost when we talk about natural resources, I think the important thing we need to look at is to include the aspect of our youth development. And that is why I decided to talk, about it or present this here today. So if one of our ladies is there who can read for us, please, may you continue for me.
Thank you. Our lady who is only available is Sister Ida. Sister Ida, will you be able to read this presentation, or can I read it?
Sorry, please, could you read it? I was
you.
doing something else, but I am listening. Thank you.
Welcome, Sister Ida. Now, Brother Husu, how do you want me to read it? Do I read the whole document and you'll share your thoughts, or what do you want me to do?
Okay. I think you can read. Read the first part to I didn't number to strategic pathway forward. Read to that side because the other one is just a table.
Okay, let me do that then.
Yeah.
So let me start. So welcome to Sister Tapua. I think Sister Tapua is joining us. Yeah, she's here with us. Sister Tapua, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Just that I've been having internet problems.
Yeah, I've realized that. So welcome. So I'm doing the reading of Brother Usu's presentation. Then I'll comment on his presentation once I'm done with the first part of the reading.
All right, thank you.
Now, the title of this presentation is Harnessing African Youth Dividend, Opportunities, Challenges, and Country Comparison. This is in line with our topic, managing African resources. And Brother Osu is saying that the biggest resources he's seeing is also the human resource, which is the youth of Africa. The presentation has been compiled by Brother Osu, Bernard Sekere. Now, African population remains the youngest globally, with an estimated 420 million people that are aged between age 15 to 35 as of the mid-2024. That is roughly 1/3 of the continent's population. And projections suggest this cohort will swell to around 830 million by 2050. This will represent more than a quarter of all youths worldwide. This is according to United Nations 2024 or United Nations 2025. And yet, despite this youth bulge, many countries face persistent challenges in translating demographic potential into productive employment. Now, equitable skills development and even inclusive digital access. There are key weaknesses in African youth development. One is actually elevated youth unemployment. Now, across sub-Saharan Africa, the model ILO estimates for youth unemployment, that is the youth age 15 to 24, fell from 12.05% in 2021 to 9.95% in 2024. Yet this aggregate masks sharp national disparities that are continuing to worldwide 2025. Now, for example, Rwanda's youth unemployment stood at 17.5% in 2024, while Kenya at 11.9% and Nigeria at 5.1%, whereas South Africa reached 60.9% in 2024. That was according to also CIA World Factbook 2024. The second weakness is the skill education mismatch. Now, where we have primary and secondary enrollment have improved significantly, but tertiary and vocational training often lag market demand. In Kenya, for example, employers report a digital and project management skill gap among graduates, with only 40% of applicants meeting baseline job requirements. That's according to the Ministry of ICT in Kenya by 2023. Another issue is digital divide, which is over only 38% of Africa had reliable internet access in 2024, compared to over 90% in high-income regions. That's according to International Telecommunication Union by 2024. In rural areas, lack of affordable devices and data bundles remain the foremost barrier for youth seeking online work. And this is according also to Brookings Institute by 2025. Another weakness is the fragmented youth policy implementation. The look at this is that the Pan-African Framework, the African Youth Charter, and Agenda 2063 provide coherent vision, but frequently encountered funding shortfalls, coordination gaps, and weak accountability at national and subnational levels. That's according to AU, Africa Union Commission in 2024. And the last weakness is the dominance of the informal economy. So over 80% of the working youth in some countries earn livelihood informally, often without social protection and stable income, constraining pathways to skill upgrading and secure transition to formal employment. And this is according to World Bank 2025. But also, I need to stop there. But also, I'll stop there.
Yeah.
Are you around?
Would you add a strategic pathway forward?
Okay, that's noted. Let me add that. Now, the strategic pathway forward include one, We have to enhance our TVET and work-based learning, which means we need to do co-design curricula with industry partners. For example, the Rwanda Integrated Polytechnic Model to align training with employers' needs. That's according to Ministry of Education in 2024. We also need to scale apprenticeship and paid internship through wage subsidy scheme. Another thing is we need to bridge the digital divide, which is zero rate access to career potential or portal, e.g. the South African youth.mobi, and prioritizing public Wi-Fi expansion in the sub-district and subsidize low-cost smartphones and data bundles for low income. Also, we need to bolster youth entrepreneurship, which means expand seed funding programs, mentorship networks, and business incubation hubs with simplified registration and reporting. We need to deepen also public-private partnership, which is establish employer-led training outcomes that disburse grants and containment on verified job application or placement. We need also to convene sector-specific skill council to certify competence and develop occupational standards. We need to also harmonize credentials and labor mobility, which include leverage on AFTA protocol on skill recognition to facilitate cross-border internship and job opportunities. We need to embed M&E framework, which is monitoring and evaluation framework, where we disaggregate youth labor data by age, gender, geography, and education level for real-time policy recalibration. Now here we just have the comparative analysis of youth employment and their key initiatives. So you see here we have Rwanda, we have Kenya, we have Nigeria, we have South Africa, Tunisia, and Egypt. So again, we have the element in the chart. We have issues like, if we check the next chart, we have things like their key initiative, industry line, TVET, Nigeria Digital by the Ministry, Nigeria Jubilee Program, Federal Program, Youth Employment Service. Then we also have other countries are not listed. In Rwanda, we have achieved 76% of TVET graduates within 6 months. We have trained 1 million Kenyans, youth in digital freelancing. We have 20,000 paid year-long placements in Nigeria. We have 139,000 youth roles created by the ZAR. Then we have net rate in Tunisia is around, rural is 32.4% versus urban 20% assessment to long term. Then you have also labor force participation of 23% in Egypt, raising unemployment. But also,
Yeah, thank you very much. So now it's open for questions and comments.
yes, Sister Ida. Sister Ida.
Sorry, I'm talking and I didn't realize I was mute. Where did you just restart at? Because there was something about oh dear, young people's getting jobs. It wasn't called jobs, it was called apprenticeships. And the bit about apprenticeships, I was wondering if Brother Wusu could talk a bit more about that, but I can't see it. I can't see it here, so I can't continue. I think it said something, subsidizing something, and that was the bit I wanted him to talk about. No, where you just restarted about apprenticeships.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's one of the recommendations that it should be promoted. It's something, you see, I personally, I always want to cast my my eyes back because I believe in Sankofa. I have to say that what has it been before we entered this crisis? And you'll find that Africa traditionally, it was apprenticeship even within the families. You start within you follow your father or your uncle or your grandparents to learn from them. And then you acquire the skill and you are able to establish on your own before even you get married and also have your home and then start your own family. But with the coming of colonization, you know that the focus was to create labor and the kind of, I mean, work system which actually isn't compatible with the way we were living. Besides that, because they wanted market, they didn't encourage entrepreneurship across. In fact, even existing industries like poultry, metallurgy, and all these, I mean, related ones were destroyed. And you see, so that they would bring in their product and I mean eliminate our local artisans and the rest. You see, so a lot has been done to the way we had advanced in grooming the young ones. I mean, more or less has been destroyed. You see, but then we need to go back to that, and it is something also which this is not just my own ideas, but it comes from other sources also that interpret. I mean, apprenticeship can help a lot in scaling people. Normally, they will say it's informal, but informal today also has been given recognition. I quite remember the last South Africa, Statistics South Africa census they did on employment and unemployment of the youth. In fact, people criticized, but they came out to explain that this time they factor into it the informal sector also. So when they are counting, any figure that comes include the informal sector, which is an improvement for me. It's an improvement in how the data should be actually collected. You see, which means that they are giving recognition to what uh, the West don't recognize. But then within our local context, we are giving recognition to what we feel should be part of of the system. Yeah. So apprenticeship isn't something that we can wash away. Even with the 4IR that we are already in now, still a lot can be acquired in terms of what are the relevant things which within this era we can still say that we will practice those skills and they cannot be affected by the I mean AIs and robots that are coming. So that is maybe what I can say that it is very important. And it is more also an aspect of our own tradition, which if we encourage that, it can help us to eliminate the redundancy in our society, especially South Africa here. And if you look at the figure of South Africa in terms of the unemployed youth, it's quite outrageous compared to other African countries. So, but the problem in South Africa is that there is no apprenticeship, and then also, I mean, you, there's nothing like I am selling, I am doing something on my own which I have learned from my father or from my uncle. So, South Africa's situation is unique in itself, which needs a different approach altogether to tackle it. But if you look at the rest of Africa, I think apprenticeship is something that should be encouraged more, and then we can have a more stable youth community who also can, how do I put it, who can transfer how they learn to the another generation that follows them. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll take Sister Tapua's question, then I'll do my presentation, then we combine all the questions and answers, comments, and everything else. Sister Tapua?
Thank you very much. Mine has to do with the situation that we have in Zimbabwe, where a lot of the companies that used to take apprenticeships are non-existent. And people are buying and selling anything. There's the market economy. Because I'm looking at a situation where, by design, we were put into the mode of looking for employment. So our graduates leave the learning institution to look for employment, not to create business. So the question is, what then do we do in a situation like Zimbabwe, where industries are folding by the day and there is informal apprenticeships, but only in those fields that were by design meant to be occupied by the Black population? I see a gap between the technological advancement that's going on and the lack of spaces for people to be apprenticed. Because the older generation, the older ones, do not have the skills. I was in one group where people were saying, can you imagine someone graduating with something in computer science, but they've never had the opportunity to actually get into an organization and design an app or any of those things? So what we have is a situation where, by design, the neo-colonial situation has riveted us back into being a population that's waiting to serve in the areas where the neo-colonial masters want us to serve, because we're not producing anything. In Zimbabwe, we're exporting raw lithium, raw this, raw that, and there's just no, our youth are going into artisanal mining and dying in the mines, and because they are so unprofessionally managed, and it's just a difficult situation. So what I'm saying is, what do we do? Because we don't have enough spaces for people to be apprenticed. Thank you.
Yes, brother, also come in as I prepare the next
Could I
presentation.
also make a comment before Brother Owusu?
Okay.
It's to do with what Sister Topa has just said.
Yes, go ahead, Sister Ida.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
I was going to ask Brother Owusu to also mention about the wages and this. I think it said subsidiary wages, because just like Sister Topa said, there are people who are doing apprenticeships, but it's not necessary to big organizations. I mean, a lot of people who do cars, repair cars and stuff, have apprenticeships, but the wages are so low. So I'd like maybe to comment on the wage system a bit, because I think that it is going on, but it's not necessarily benefiting fully those who are trying to learn, especially when it comes to wages. Thank you.
Yeah. So can I? Yeah, I agree with what you are saying, but I know apprenticeship level, in most cases, you are still to be under your parents to support you with certain things. But in some places, like with organizations, you may get some stipend. Um, and I think that is in South Africa, for instance, the way the government is encouraging that is to say that, okay, if a company you take some students on apprenticeship basis, uh, there will be some subsidies or some compensations for those companies. Yeah. So, but then the government doesn't specify what should be given to the apprentice, because they want rather to make sure that it shouldn't become a hindrance to this kind of project, to ensure that youth are able to acquire some experiences after their training, or even if they don't have the training at all. Yeah. And Sister Tapua, Sister Tapua,
Brother. Yes, my brother.
I'm coming to your. Yeah, you see, I've been in your country. In fact, I wanted to base there in 2018. So I spent about almost like 10 to 11 months. But I would say that I spent almost like 11 to 12 months in Zimbabwe because from 2010 I came there. That was the time I wanted to explore doing something in that in Harare. Yeah, so I learned a lot, and I remember at a point when I was talking to some of these vendors, and they tell us that we don't have a job. Then I said, but what you are doing is better than a
It's a
job
joke.
because you are making money every day. If you are in a job, it's just at the end of the month that some small money will come into your hands. You see, so it's the mindset that our people have. That if we can actually make them see that it is uh, trading and all these things are what made our grandparents, poor grandparents, rich people who could, I mean, do a lot of things. You see, it's better than when you are limited to a salary which you have no choice but to live by that salary. And yesterday I downloaded some data. I can't upload it here, but it was Zimbabwe on youth unemployment was isn't that big at is under 20. Yes, it's under 20%. You see, compared to South Africa, which is 60. And the reason why it is under 20% is because of these vendors who are also in the street. I mean, it is taken now by the World Bank as part of, I mean, income, I mean, catchment, and they are even subject to taxes. In Ghana, for instance, the government taxed all of them, all the vendors, street vendors, everybody pay tax. You see, so we need to actually find a way to disabuse that mind that unless somebody employ me, and that is why in South Africa today, because the white people also are using that to impoverish and our natives. Why? Because they offer more jobs, and they decided not to do that, rather automating certain part of their industries, and then the coming in of AI and the rest, that means that they don't need you again because even they may say that your labor is not skilled. So why should we put you on? You see, so it's becoming a big problem. It has also raised the thinking that if whites come, they will create jobs. But I remember 2008 when we were doing food security at UKZN here, and one professor, a white professor, told us that look, if the government push we the white farmers to the corner, we are going to mechanize everything and we are not going to take anybody on. You see, so until we are able to tell our people that trade, sell, buy and sell. If you can't produce, just buy from the producer and sell. It's better than to go and be in the house of somebody or just be on the farm whereby even I remember they said that there was a time they used to pay them with liquor, not even money. They give you food, they give you alcohol. You see, so we need to actually work hard to find a way that people should step up into the streets or find a way to go to the farm, buy the products, come and sell to others. I have people who are doing that. And there's a lady with us yesterday. I was at their home where now what she's doing is that she wants to get into farm. He's under 40 years. He said that look, there's a land that we have. I'm going to actually cultivate the land. And then when she produces, somebody should be there to buy and also bring it to the market. That is the kind of value chain that we need to educate our youth on. And it is part also of the apprenticeship because then somebody needs to educate them on this, I mean, all these areas which are vacant, especially in South Africa here.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Utu. Thank you, Brother Utu. Thank you for the first part of this. I'll be doing the second part, but we'll take back now questions and open up for suggestions so that we can either go back to Brother Utu's presentation or mine. I did thank you. I did a PowerPoint, but it's very brief. I've decided to look at back original document because this is very wide a bit so that I can touch on some few things. It's a 7-page document. I intend to take maximum of 15 minutes. Then we can come back to this conversation. So the topic of our discussion today is managing Africa resources. And Brother Utu is actually giving the element of the human resource in terms of the young people as the greatest potential. Mine will be focusing on Africa resources in terms of the natural resources and other minerals and the rest. So the vision or the purpose of this, my presentation, is to ensure that we have a radical Pan-African vision for continental ownership, the liberation and development of Africa. So I start by looking at the Africa resource wealth. And that resource of Africa is the foundation for continental liberation. If we can take good use of our resources, we can liberate ourselves from economic and then come with political ties that we are enslaved and we are trapped in. So Africa unparalleled resources wealth is the bedrock of our sovereignty. It's what can also help in our unification and our liberation as a continent. And this is what you have. This data has been repeated all over again. Every time we come across that 30% of the global mineral reserves, that include gold, cobalt, lithium, diamond, manganese, and rare earths, critical for green energy and technology sectors, are in Africa. The words in the bracket are the references, because I have the references down there, so where the references are quoted from. Then you have 12% of global oil reserves in Africa, and 8% of global natural resources, natural gas reserves, with major deposits that are found in Nigeria, Angola, and Algeria. We have 60% of world cobalt production, primarily in Democratic Republic of Congo. We have 70% of manganese and 70% of iridium, essential for low carbon technology like electric vehicle battery. Today, electric vehicles are coming from China, but they are in Congo taking this product to go build their so-called electric. They talk of green emission energy, but they loot it here and they go use it out there. Now, over $5.6 trillion in mineral wealth. Africa has over $5.6 trillion in mineral wealth. And these actually include minerals like gold, lithium, oil, and the rest. So those are some of the few all statistics we have. Hope you can hear me clearly now. I've been asked by Elder Sam to raise my voice. Can you hear me? Please confirm that.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Now we also have 60% of world uncultivated arable land. And this is concentrated in the East and Central Africa, offering a vast agricultural potential. Now, even in the recent link that I shared about the AU conference that was going on in the one that was going on, I think, with the PAP, they are talking of this 60% of the land. So it means Africa has only exploited half 40%. 60% is still left. And there's a hidden agenda that is coming in by the so-called World Economic Forum. Last time I talked about it, and since I followed it up, what you call the 15-minute city. There's an agenda of various governments in Africa to try to create what we call affordable housing or unified housing, where people move to maybe a modern houses, you assemble maybe 2,000 households in that place. Do you know why? They're intending to do that so that people can move from the villages and leave the land, because they think that Africans are lazy to exploit their land. So get them to a building in an apartment, give them that home, then the land they live there, bring multinational company to invest and cultivate that land, and employ Africans in that their farm to work in that farm. But the money goes out. That's the plan they have. So then we have an immense also renewable potential energy, which includes solar and wind resources, as we've seen in Morocco solar initiative. So this wealth has been plundered through centuries of colonial and neo-colonial exploitation, with foreign entities extracting value while African communities remain impoverished. There's a need for a radical Pan-African framework, which is rooted in Ubuntu, the collective humanity, and our socialism that demands total continental ownership to dismantle the resource class and achieve the liberation, the unification, and Afrocentric development. If you look at the statistics of our resources, in a continental perspective, African resources must be viewed as a unified continental asset for collective prosperity. We must reject the divisive economic community, the so-called REX, and we need to have a consolidated overview, which includes, in terms of minerals, as we said, the Africa supply all those minerals. And the value is equivalent to 5.6 trillion. We look at the oil gas. Nigeria is having 1.4 million barrels of oil per day. Angola, 1.1 million barrels of oil per day. And Algeria, 3% of global production. This drives Africa 12% of global oil and 8% of gas reserves. That 60% of the land that's uncultivated can feed Africa itself and export surplus. And that will reduce food insecurity that is affecting 85% of Africa's population. Our vast solar, wind, geothermal potential can power a self-reliant Africa. All Africa. In fact, Nkrumah, and there was a project, I think it's being followed now by Chinese. The Chinese are coming in to follow a project. There's a River Congo alone. It's believed that River Congo alone is capable of giving Africa, the entire Africa, to lighten the entire Africa. We have an economic potential. So if we can only have a United States or a United Nations of Africa that will centralize these resources under a single government framework that prioritizes African need over foreign profit, motivates and foster equitable distribution. That is what we need. Now, we've been having a neo-colonial control, and this is a barrier for our African sovereignty. The African resources are currently siphoned, as we know. And by who? By foreign multinational corporations. They're perpetuating neocolonialism and economic dependence. And this must be matched if we have to achieve true liberation. Look, for example, the European Union alone, the European domination, the UK, control almost 60 billion of Kenya, of Africa resources, $60 billion, France, $54 billion, and Netherlands, $54 billion. These hold a massive foreign direct investment stocks in Africa, and they include in mining, oil, gas sector, and they extract wealth with minimal local benefits. The Chinese exploitation, the China foreign direct investment grew 40% annually from 2010 to 2020, targeting cobalt in DRC, oil in Angola, and in fact, structures via the Belt and Road Initiative, often replicating the colonial extractive model. I've come across this document of Road China, and look at it, Belt and Road Initiative by China. In fact, there's a document I was sent to review for this purpose, where Germany and France are seeking to join China in the exploitation of Africa through this Belt and Road Initiative. And Africans, I think if I can remember that quote, as they were saying, that Africans do not have a problem with that. So France and Germany want to partner and join the initiative of Road and Belt Initiative by China to come in Africa in the name of investment, when the reality is to exploit Africa. The US involvement, the corporations like Exxon Mobil and Chevron dominate oil and gas, while tech firms like Google exploit emerging sectors, often under bilateral agreements favoring foreign interests. There's an illicit financial flows, Like in 2022, Africa lost $587 billion to financial leakages, which include $90 billion in AIFF, $275 billion through MNC profit shifting, and $148 billion through corruption. Nigeria and South Africa lose $2.2 billion and $2.7 billion annually, respectively. Now, there was a report that was done by an organization called War on One, 2016. We have reviewed. The title of that report was The New Colonialism. And in that 2016, in that report, the title was New Colonialism, but the end is very important. The Britain scramble for Africa energy and mineral resources. And in detail, 101 London Stock Exchange listed companies operating in 37 sub-Saharan African countries were controlling $1.05 trillion in terms of resources across oil, gold, diamond, coal, platinum, amongst others. And this must be rejected. The key findings included the oil company, for example, Tullow Oil, which is Anglo-Irish. It controls 307 million barrels of oil across Uganda, Kenya, and Ghana. The Shell company holds 681 million barrels of oil, primarily in Nigeria, with operations in Kenya and South Africa. In diamond sector, Anglo-American, UK, and South Africa, but the De Beers control 316 million carats in Botswana, South Africa, and Namibia. The Petra Diamond in UK manages 309 million carats in South Africa, Tanzania, and Botswana. In gold, the Rand Gold Resource UK operates in Mali, DRC, Cote d'Ivoire. Anglo Gold Ashanti, South Africa, LLC listed, major producer in South Africa, Ghana, and Tanzania. In the platinum and coal, you have Glencore, which is from Switzerland and UK, control assets in South Africa and DRC. You have Rio Tinto, which is active in South Africa and Zimbabwe. Other companies include Vedanta Resources, which exploits copper in Zambia, zinc in South Africa, and linked with environmental and human rights abuses. You have BHP Billiton, which is also operating in UK and Australia, and operates, registered in UK and Australia, operates in South Africa, all Guinea, Exit, tax haven. 25% of these companies use tax haven to facilitate their profiteering or profit shifting. The UK government is also complicit because in 2013, high-level prosperity partnerships secured resources across in Angola, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Mozambique, and Tanzania. The impact of this is that these operations cause displacement, killing, labor violation, and environmental degradation, with African government holding only 5 to 20% of mining projects. This neo-colonial exploitation must end, and it can only end if you have a United States or a United Nations of Africa that will nationalize these resources and expel all foreign multinational companies and distribute this wealth for African development. Now, the benefits of that is very immense. We can have a lot from that unification or nationalization. Actually, we could fund over 560 billion in export and 450 billion in income. We could have full ownership that can mobilize $1.3 trillion in domestic revenues. This will eliminate foreign aid dependence. Capturing 10% of that 15 trillion global green mineral market by 2030, that could fund Afrocentric industrialization. We could have a collective industrialization where we shift our continental industrial policy from raw mineral export to manufactured goods. We can also actually use that youth age of Africa, as Brother Oates was saying, and this could add us almost $47 billion GDP of workforce participation alone. We can reduce poverty, We can have a global control by nationalizing and having a continental framework. This will give Africa unmatched geopolitical leverage. There are radical policies that we must take. We must nationalize our resources in a continental scale. We must dismantle neocolonial structures. We must ban tax haven, profit shifting, and adopt a continental tax code to recover over 88.6 billion that disappears annually. We must nullify all exploitative agreements, including the UK's Prosperity Partnership, and renegotiate contracts that prioritize African ownership. This could lead to a lot in terms of AFCA that can be a tool for our unification. We could build Afrocentric infrastructure in transport, in energy, in digital, in so many sectors. Of course, now we have a Pan-African payment system, settlement system that can actually, or is actually now facilitating trade. We could foster socialist development, which means embrace Ubuntu and socialism, prioritizing our collective welfare, not individual welfare, our collective welfare, ensuring that resources benefit all Africa. We could establish, for example, the Pan-African cooperatives for mining, for agriculture, for manufacturing, for empowering our local community. And we could empower Africa's youth, train this youth in Afrocentric technologies and governance, develop educational system which is continental, rooted in African values and history. And we could reject this so-called regionalism, this so-called SADC, EAC, whatever. We dissolve all those rights in favor of a single continental governance structure. And this will ensure a unified resource policy. We have what has worked in Botswana, for example, the diamond sovereignty, even though it was in partnership, the Mauritius self-reliance in terms of what they do in economic planning, the Morocco in renewable energy. And you can draw inspiration from Kwame Nkrumah, which we envision a united Africa, and from Sankara, which push for self-reliance. This can inspire our approaches. We need to check other things, including a continental revenue authority. We need, instead of country revenue authority, we need to have a continental revenue authority. We need to have Africa youth and growing digital access. We need to have sustainable management that aligns with all that they want. And challenges is that overcoming neocolonial resistance, elite capture, not only neocolonial, elite capture, and colonial era borders requires commitment of Pan-Africanism. So Africa resources or Africa resource wealth is the key to the liberation, to the unification and to the development. And therefore, neocolonial exploitation by these so-called multinational companies, as exposed by various reports, including the War on Want, has robbed the continent of its potential. And therefore, it's time for a radical Pan-African framework that's rooted in our Ubuntu or our socialism, and that envision a unified Africa that nationalize all resources, dismantle all foreign control, and prioritize collective prosperity. The FTA can be a unification tool. It can help us build Afrocentric infrastructure. It can empower our people, and Africa can achieve a total sovereignty and create a self-reliant and equitable future. We have seen this work in various countries. So that's my brief presentation. The references include various books here. We have reports from UNICAD, we have reports from Brookings Institute, we have CSI reports, we have Want report, we have AFCA, we have Nkrumah book, Africa Must Unite, and so many of the resources are put in place. So thank you very much, and that's my short presentation. I'm the chair, and I'm also now the speaker. So the floor is open for members to come in. Thank you. For other questions in regard to Brother Usu or my presentation, so that you can keep the conversation. Hope you can hear me. Yes, Brother Usu. Brother Usu, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. The unity it's a critical thing that we need. The reason I'm saying it is that, you see, the current kind of politics, the so-called democracy, but I mean, how it also hits us from within. Um, you see, these politicians, like you mentioned when we started earlier about the Kenyan politicians going to America. I mean, what are they going to do? Of course, at the end of the day, they will get certain companies, organizations, even governments to sponsor them. And what comes out of that? You put your hands in your hand in their mouth. They're gonna buy. So we need to reshape the kind of political system that actually we are using, whereby you need a whole lot of money to campaign, and then the money has to be borrowed from outside. And after that, how do you pay? You need to make this concession of bringing them in and then giving them way unconditional for them to do whatever they want to do. You see, so our the unity. We think whatever we can do to push these governments to actually agree, but we should also know that the forces are behind. The external forces are also ready to fight that, and therefore we need a better strategy to actually overcome the hindrance that we face today, because the uh, Africa should be able to grow on its own, but what is hindering us is the enemy we all know. But the enemy is allowed in by ourselves, not that they push, not that they break the door, but then we invite them in.
Thank you, but those I think that's very important. The question on how do you attain the unity? We are seeing what's going on in Sahel. I think they are very deliberate on unification, very committed and very deliberate and very intentional. They are trying to move things that haven't been done for the last 60 years. And then that force that the link or the key to our unity is our leadership. The key to our unity and our division is our leadership. If we have a leadership that allows to be puppets, they'll always obey their master. But how much are we investing towards building the leaders that can then focus on the unification of Africa? And the answer is zero.
Zero. Absolute zero.
But
Absolute zero.
How heavy are they investing to have their puppets? Just mention for you example of young Kenyans that have now gone there for their training. How heavily are they investing for the next puppet of continent? The all majority of sons of the current president, daughters of the current president are in their university, London, Oxford, and the rest, prepared and trained to be the next puppet. And if we accept that the key and the weakness to our unity is our leadership, if we are not deliberate to have a leadership that will then liberate us, then they will continue to ensure that we have a leadership that keeps us divided. And as much as we are divided, they will continue robbing from us. Because in any country they are robbing, there's a leadership. They have been sent away from Senegal just recently now. They've been sent away from Mali, Burkina Faso, and that is possible, but it requires leadership. Sister,
I think that I've got two words out of, I know this seems a bit far-fetched, but I've got two words that I've taken, or a word I've taken from each of you. And for you, Brother Pigman, I think it was youth poverty. And for Brother Owusu, I think it was apprenticeship and oh, the other word doesn't come, but apprenticeships. It was about apprenticeships, and I think that that is something that is missing throughout. Not that it's missing, but something that is of vital importance to all of Africa, because I think that in a way we should be fighting for those countries who are stripping our wealth out of the country, that they should have to be paying for the youth of those countries, and that money should be going in to stop youth poverty and also to start apprenticeships. And seriously, I think that those are the two things that you've all said a lot, and yes, they're all very important. But to me, those are the two things that really stand out, and that instead of seeing our youth all being dispersed all over the world or running from Africa, we need to be trying to empower them to be the future leaders. And I think that's one of the things that Burkina Faso and the other Sahel states are doing. They're working on their youth as well as the older workers, but they've inspired their youth. Let's put it that way. They have a young leader, and it's the youth that are also sort of working to build up the country, and I think that is important, you know. So to me, those are the two things I think. I hear that. I think, yes, this is something we should really be fighting. That those who are at the moment managing to exploit our continent should be paying for the uplifting of the youth. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sister Ida. Thank you very much. It's very unfortunate, for example, in Kenya, the president is very proud that he has exported young Kenyans to go work as skilled laborers outside Africa. There's a trend of so many young ladies leaving Kenya and Uganda to go work in Arabic countries, Middle East. They work, of course, for some good money if you compare to what you have here. They're passing through a lot. In a continent with 60% of uncultivated land, the young people lack employment in the continent, and they're walking out to continents that not ever have anything to cultivate. But it's not that we don't have resources or money. The priority of our money, like in Kenya, goes to build a church in State House and stop funding education totally, but take money for church in State House. Take money to build a stadium for football and says that there's no money for public education in primary schools. That is the mismatch. And that is very important to be fixed. Brother Osu, and anybody want to speak, please come in.
Yeah. You see, when it comes to the youth, I mean, to put it in the context of the resource that we have. You see, when people are trained, you don't need to direct them again because they will know what to do. Like Sister Takua mentioned about Zimbabwe, where I mean they are doing this Galam, we call it a Zama Zama, without the I mean not even being trained for those things. And then what happened is that they die in their numbers. I was there in 2018 when the president actually said that he will license them to do the mining as a way of also engaging the youth in something. But then, I mean, even though you license them, on what basis? What kind of training is the state giving to these young ones so that at the end of the day, they are able to do mining, which is safe, and they are also able to extract in a way which is sustainable sustainable in the sense that the land is not destroyed. You see, so for me, if we are able to give training to our young people, whichever level they are equipped, they will know what to do. You see, they will know what to do, and for that matter, somebody who is coming here is coming because at the end of the day, they even bring their own workers, like the Chinese. They bring their own workers. But then if we had well-trained workforce also, or people who have all the skills that they can use in these things, I don't think even what we call them, these expatriates and these companies coming from overseas will be needed. And then the second thing is that our politicians and government need to recognize that our youth are the main capital that we need on this continent. And once we are leading, I think the next thing is to offer them the training that will help them to know what to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Brother Windhoek? Sir Windhoek or Elder Sam or Sister Tapua, any of you want to come in?
Brother Pigeon, can I come in?
Yes, please come in, Elder Sam.
Yes. Good evening, everybody on the platform. I really listened very carefully to this topic today, and it leaves me at crossroads with my view of the situation. You know, as we speak currently, a 4-day summit called the Liberation Movement Summit is taking place in South Africa. It encompasses all the liberation movements that fought for liberation in Southern Africa, but it also includes other liberation movements worldwide. And for me, the issue here is that they say they are meeting under the heading Defending the Liberation Gains, Advancing Integrated Socio-Economic Development, Strengthening Solidarity for a Better Africa. If you take this whole topic, it says a lot. The gains of the liberation movement, as far as we are concerned in South Africa, being the most unequal society in the world, what gains of liberation are we talking about? So, and this is taking place at the backdrop of a country that has gained its liberation in 30 years ago. And the situation for us, the African majority, has not improved. So if we take what we have listened to today, the youth in South Africa is almost 1/3 of the country, and 21 million of those youth are unemployed between the ages of 15 to 35. They are unemployed. Where are you going to see this development, socio-economic development, getting Africa to be better or South Africa to be better? No way, because the youth that are 1/3 of the country are unemployed, and some of them have resigned. This includes a broad spectrum of our youth. Some of them are highly qualified graduates, but they are in the streets and not. So the challenge here for me is that are we having leaders that are genuine? This meeting where they are meeting now, which has about 2,000 delegates for 4 days, how much is going to be spent? And if they go out of that meeting, how many of them are going to really change meaningfully the plight of their people? As for us in South Africa, we are at a crossroads. We are at a knife edge. And you will see all these aspects that we are talking about, where migrants are seen as the problem. Those are side issues. The real issues is mismanagement of our affairs by our leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Elder Sam. Window, could you like to come in before I go to those who have spoken before? I'll come back to you. Those whose hands are up. Window, do you want to share anything on this?
Pass for now.
Okay. Let's go to Sister
Thank you.
Tapu. Oh, Elder Mafole, let's go to Sister Tapua, then I come back to Sister Tapua, Brother Usu, then I come to Elder Mafole. Sister Tapua?
Thank you very much. In the past few weeks or a month or two, I've started to think about why we're trying to model our success and the direction that we should go based on people who developed on theft and exploitation. Because, like I've said before, we are in this I've got to find a job mode, because we were conditioned to think that to be successful, you have to be given a job by the capitalist who's there to exploit you. So the conditioning is so deep, and we keep referring to employment statistics. And I'm feeling that we're almost saying we need to go in the direction that they should be going because their populations are this, that, or the other. I think we need to think anew to try and get our people to realize that what is important at the end of the day? What is it that is important at the end of the day for a person? For Ubuntu, what makes a human being fulfilled? Because what we are pursuing in terms of employment, in terms of going up the management ladder and getting all those perks that kind of lull us into thinking that we're part of the capitalist owners themselves and so on, is not the way we should go. I think we need to think anew. We need to inculcate in our population, in our youths. I know in Zimbabwe, it's such a painful process because people are leaving, our youth is leaving university with the hope of getting a job somewhere that's going to pay them well, like their ancestors were employed somewhere and paid well. They forget that they were exploited very well too. But the elders in our community, because they have lived through that process where their livelihood was from holding a job that was given by X who was taking advantage of them. That's the only thing they know. Therefore, to then tell the young person who's graduating from university that university is supposed to be a place that makes you think outside the box and solve problems. It should not necessarily be institutions producing people to meet jobs, because that's also a dangerous way. I know my brother in the first presentation on human resources also mentioned that there's a mismatch between what is required by industry and what people are producing from the education institution. Yes, but that's also dangerous because of the way and the speed with which things are changing. So we have a population that is lagging behind in analysis of where we should be going when we're looking at the technical things that are going on, because we're producing people who are going to end up selling their labor to be care workers when they've been trained to be engineers because AI has taken over. So I am saying we as Africans need to go back to basics. What makes a human being a human being? Basic things, accommodation, food, shelter, and then in the same breath, because we're almost being pushed from, before we've even joined the Industrial Revolution fully, we're being taken into another one. And that's, the technological one. And that's a gap that's going to be difficult for our people and for ourselves to see and picture. So unless we train our population to keep reminding themselves that what's important is not accumulation of wealth and things, but it's holding on to being a human being. So that, for example, we're not taken in by people who are saying, oh, we're investors. We've come to invest. Come to invest in what? To then leave us with polluted rivers, to leave us with no land, and then we call that investment. So I'm suggesting a radical position here. For Africans to be in charge of their resources, we need to go back to ourselves, to saying confidently that we are not mining unless the produce helps us directly and in a tangible way, not just helps our leadership to stash their proceeds in Switzerland or wherever they put it. I'm still of that position that if we're going to help Africa benefit from its resources, we must close Africa down. Full stop. Let's start again. Let's stop these guys in their tracks because they cannot do without us. I'm very confident we can do without them. Because if according to their statistics, we've been living on $4 a day or $1 a day, what's new? What's new? I think we need to go the Traore way. Just shut it down. Let's start again and let them, instead of getting called in force by Trump to be exploited and divided, let's stand together and say, we as Africa are going to claim our rightful position in the world of importance. Our people are the most important because our youth is running away from our leaders who are touching our wealth elsewhere. Therefore, our youth have to follow wherever that wealth is going, and that's wrong. That's very wrong. I'm sorry for being so radical, but I think our example of development, our example of what we need as a people has to be different. We cannot use the formula that they have used, because if they continue using that formula, it means they will continue to exploit us and will continue to try and dance to their tune to try and achieve what they've achieved, which is impossible if we don't have anyone else to cheat and exploit and steal from. Thank you. I'll stop there for now.
Thank you, Sister Tapua. You try to say that we should not exploit our resources.
I am saying we should only exploit our resources when they are to our benefit. We
And what makes
cannot
them to be our benefit?
What is it that we want as a people? If you look at the African population today, if you look at the common men in the street, what do they need? Because we're being taken in by statistics that we have a GDP of this, we have that, we have these numbers. But when you look at the ordinary person in the street,
So
it's neither here nor there.
Africans don't need a phone. Africa don't need a restaurant anywhere. Africa don't need any money.
Right. Do Africans need a phone when they're living under a bridge?
Now, what will construct that bridge if it's not money?
And I am saying, do we need the bridge? Where is it going to? Because a lot of the bridges that we have and the roads that we have been built to extract from us. I think you're the one who said part of they come in the guise of saying we're developing you, we're partnering, only to exploit.
No,
And I'm
Sister Sam,
saying, Mhm.
I'm very clear that we don't need exploitation from the West for our resources. What I'm asking you,
Yes.
we don't also need to exploit our resources for our benefit?
We do. Only when we can exploit them for our benefit. If you look at Burkina Faso, for example, they were producing gold raw, but they turned it around by making sure that the process is completed within for the benefit of the people. If I'm talking about Zimbabwe, for example, we've got loads of lithium. Our roads are getting destroyed because we're shipping it raw. China is taking land, soil from here unprocessed. And I'm saying, let's stop it because we're not getting anything out of it. If we stopped it, it wouldn't make a difference to the ordinary person in the street. And we need to have strategies to make sure that people benefit from the lithium. If I'm talking about Zimbabwe, for example, I mean, I'm not even sure of the exact figures anymore, but it's almost like $50 billion worth of diamond was lost. We lost it.
Okay, thank you. Because what was my recommendation include one is that first we need to nationalize our resources. The same way Burkina Faso has been doing, we need to take total control of our resources. It's not that we will not export them, but on our terms and under our control, so that we can also totally do away with so-called multinational, rectify those so-called agreement and partnership, review anything else that was said was agreed on or whatever. And those were part of the recommendation I was posing, that we need to take total control of our resources. And we need to stop what we call raw whatever. We have to export, we have to trade, but trade on our terms.
Can I come in?
Yes.
Right. My brother, I think, is in South Africa, and he was saying about the liberation movements getting together and trying to preserve the liberation gains. I've become very wary of people saying our resources, because in the Zimbabwean context, we've been taken in by Black people who say, our country, we have reclaimed our land. And when you look at who this our is, it takes people in, because we've made the mistake of thinking that our is Black. And then we end up having these people who are saying our land, our liberation, our so and so, only benefiting their next of kin and their children, who are then trained, like you were saying, in Oxford and everywhere else, to come and subjugate us further. So the reason why I'm saying we need to close is because we need to see who is for, who's against. I accept that literary closing is not going to be possible or easy. But if you look at the Burkina Faso situation, they were forced into it. They were forced into stopping and then pivoting. We need to stop and then pivot. We need to stop and make sure these guys like Trump know that we are not going to trade with them. If it's a war, then let it be. They'll think twice. And they will then come to our table to do things on our terms. But at this point in time, we're having a roll call of leaders getting called in force. And what should we do with that? Are we hoping that these leaders who've been trained by those guys are going to turn us around? No, no.
Okay.
And what's their definition of Africans doing well? South Africa is supposed to be our example of an African country getting industrialized, but here we are with 60% of the youth unemployed. My sister just posted, I think in the main group, Ghanaians throwing Nigerians out. It's because of the youth thing. It's because people are desperate and we're starting to turn in on each other. And of course, we know who's going to be happy about that. So I think we just need to stop. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other person want to come in before I get to Brother Ausu? Okay, Brother Ausu.
Yeah, Brother Sam, I don't know whether you heard, there's it's a white historian, Hillary. I've forgotten her first name, but I have it on my laptop here. He wrote history, which when I came across it, it was so fascinating. He said that look, um, in pre-apartheid, you see, what even brought apartheid, one of the factors which actually made the whites to push for apartheid is the fact that our natives, sometimes I don't want to say black, but I prefer natives. Our natives were in commerce. They were farming, and their market. The whites couldn't compete with them. In fact, they were able to establish their own schools and even employ white teachers to teach their children commerce, because the government schools, they were not teaching commerce and economics in the public schools. So they had their own private schools where their children can learn these things. The question is, how did that disappear? Of course, it disappeared because when the white farmers couldn't do anything to beat them, then they put the pressure on the government to say that do something, other than that, they are going to be poor. And of course, government came with a legislation that no native can own any farmland, and they cannot even have a shop up to certain size, and other things that followed, which led to the eventual apartheid which ensued those days. But this type of history, one hardly hears. You see, so the young people know that it is only the white man or Indian in Africa that actually is an entrepreneur or is a business person. You see, they can't even see that it is part of their past where they could compete with these white people and they couldn't match up to how the natives could actually beat them in terms of farm products, that they were quality and they were being bought, not probably for export or to other countries around, you see. So, to add to what Sister Tapua is saying, you see, the matter is, um, we need a vision, you see, and then we need goals. You see, if you look at South Africa today, what actually pained me so much, because I did the work, which year, 2003, I think 2004 rather. And that work I studied Ghana, but it's the scope of what I looked at in terms of what these so-called liberation parties and government, why most of them fail? And you find that they never had any vision. They never had any plan. In fact, countries like Guinea, Mali, and the others coming to Zambia, uh, Tanzania, even though these were great men, but unfortunately, they play down on the economic side of governance, you see, and elevated the ranting, the jargons, political jargons, you see. So at the end of the day, money wasn't important to them. And that is why some of these contracts whereby they allow these investors to come in and just they just sign for them, do it, and then our people get jobs. Something that they could have rather made their own people to do it or to partner in a way like Zimbabwe is doing now in the 50, 51 for 49. It wasn't like that. So we've not been able to change what we started with them, you see. And until we get into history, we don't find these things, you see. So for me, what is important now is that we should force countries to come with long-term plans, 50-year plans, whereby at any part, any government, if we are still using this vote and whoever wins comes system, uh, when you come, some things should be legalized into the constitution that this vision you can't come and say that I'm doing different from that, so that we have a consistency. And with that consistency, that is why people were able to loot the state coffers. You see, we should have goals that we need to achieve every year, not because it is a part of a political party manifesto, but it is something that as a nation, we need it to live. We need it for our children to grow. We need it for our resources to benefit us. You see, if these are not legalized within the constitution, then it will be a problem. For me, having lived in South Africa for some time, you see, of course, some knows that Codesa and all these things that people are talking about today. I mean, how all these things happen? That we sold our birthrights, you see, but today the children are paying for that. Unfortunately, they don't need to face all these hardships. And if you are to come here and see how people in the township are really suffering, nothing they can do, drugs and hunger and what else? It's just painful to see these things happening in the country whereby some are so rich and so affluent and so enjoying the life to its maximum in a way that you can't actually see how in a country like this somebody can say that I want to sacrifice, but I rather want to punish these people because they want a land from us. You see. So this is where I agree with Sister Tapua that at a point, I always feel that at a point, you see, we need to revisit some of the old ways of revolution because whatever we say, what the white man believe in and is afraid of is if he sees that you can all eliminate him. That is the only language that can actually make them surrender. And if we are not able to do that, and at a point be able to stand to them, I don't know, they will enslave us completely. They will enslave us completely. But we should know that we should know and teach our children that it wasn't like as we hear, especially in South Africa, where they say that every white, because they say, whites know that I'm not South African, especially when I speak. So they will tell us that we rule our country and these people, they want to take it from us. There are times I look at them and there are cases I respond. But the whole thing is, um, how, how do we, who has allowed them to be saying all these things? And it depends also on the attitude of some of us and the way we also promote whiteness and white things and white methods and white way of actually doing things. And if so long as we encourage that, it's going to confuse our young people, and then they cannot find their way forward and even experience the liberation that we are talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Brother Angela?
Good evening, Brother Pigbin. Good evening, sir. So I will speak on today's topic. That's the effect of colonialism in Africa. And firstly, I think it's important that we need to understand how branding is being put into place on the continent by both our young ones and our adults. Because it is something that I say that we need to understand that foreign governments have an influence over the way they brand themselves in terms of different aspects, whether economically, whether socially, or whether politically. And if we don't understand that the orientation of the mindset based on how we describe foreign aid as a tool, we won't be able to have the right mindset or right change or what kind of surface we are providing, especially how we tag on the issue of humanitarian in the society. We need to encourage young people that creating dependency for themselves also means a lot in terms of contributing to the recommendations of creating public sovereignty for our African citizens. While we understand that China and the Western country have heavily invested on the African natural resources, we can promote a culture of creating an exchange by adding values. Some of these values that can be added helps us to decrease the unsustainable debts that people are saying that is happening around Africa. Instead of creating an unsustainable debt, a legacy can be created where both manufacturing process between the two countries, the African country and the Chinese land, can appear on a surface of trust of creating a trust social influence between the two countries. And this is what you want, and this is what we hope to get through understanding what kind of grading system is happening in our environment economically today. While we also remember that exploitation also happens within the African continent amongst ourselves as either an act of mistake or an act of error. We need to understand that the more issue of creating a vast knowledge of education has to be extracted through the sources of ensuring that whatever is being taught whatever is being taught on the African continent, there is a little bit of show that creates an environmental sustainability by creating a cooperation between one party or between two parties. For example, diamonds, gold, cobalt, and oil. There's a we can be able to create social act of what both parties can produce, and also what exactly does our land needs by identifying the needs and the current resources that are happening in across the African country to help reduce the exploitation, making sure that our media and entertainment are being put into a check. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, is there anybody want to still come in? We are having 9 minutes to go. I know Elder Sam is saying we need to have another session on this. Yeah, probably.
Can I go?
Yeah, Elder Sam?
Yeah, I think I've already said we need another round of this. You know, I'm worried. I think we have a challenge. In as much as I agree with Sister Tapua, but I think, and she has already said it, we need first to take sovereignty of our countries or our continent, Africa. And I don't know how we're going to classify it. It seems she has a problem with saying us. You know, President Becky, the former president of South Africa, because of the Freedom Charter in South Africa, he says, you hear people talking about giving land to our people, who is not our people in South Africa. And this is basically what has caused us to be in this state. In 1955, when they adopted the Freedom Charter that said South Africa belongs to all who live in it, they didn't realize that they are disenfranchising us and they are basically dispossessing us. And I don't know how I can classify this as. It is the indigenous people who originate in this continent of Africa. The colonialists came and took our land, our continent. And if we don't have understanding on that, then the struggle is over. There's nothing that belongs to us. So we must just hand over. But I am saying, if we understand that the us, it is we who originate here, who didn't come by ships from Europe to come and take over this, our land. And if we can't classify ourselves as ours, then there's a big problem. Traore decided, this is Burkina Faso, my land, my upland land. I am taking it over. And that's what he did. If we're going to do that, if we don't do that, we will not go to the next step that Sister Tapua is talking about, of decolonizing our people's mind, not to look for jobs, but to be creative and make jobs. In this space as we are, that will not take place. Right now, as we speak, somebody brilliantly came with an idea in Zimbabwe about a vehicle. I'm not sure if it was a vehicle, but we hear that that thing has been smuggled. It's no longer in his direct hands. And we can quote all these issues. Here in South Africa, there's a guy who came with this, please call me a ebb, whatever you call it. Up till today, he is still struggling in courts. The highest court in the land has declared that they must pay him. Now it amounts to billions. Up till today, he's not being paid. So in this neo-colonial state, where we don't have anything called ours, we will not be able to develop or do anything that we know must be done. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 5 minutes, Mr. Tapua.
Thank you very much. I think in the context of what we're discussing, we need to remember that whilst we might appear like we're taking a step forward, we always need to check it against the ultimate goal. So, for example, Zimbabwe is highlighted as a country that has claimed back the land. But when you look at who has the land, there's almost like a mirage, a trick played on the African mind that we've taken back the land. Because when the land has been taken, for example, in the public sphere, we have information, for example, which came out when the late president's daughter was getting divorced, that she has 27 farms. 27. And this is part of what we are being praised for in the whole world, that we've taken back the land. There's some people, some elite people who are taking over things. So, for example, when we say Zimbabwe came up with a policy of 51-49, 51-49 in a capitalist context just makes sure that the color of the capitalist exploiter has changed, but it has not benefited the people. You end up having people who are stinking rich, heartless, without Ubuntu, giving gifts of cars. You know, you sing very well, you dance very well at the president's whatever, I'll buy you a car. And now we have our youths who are all trying to outdo each other because they want a gift. And I'm saying there's something fundamentally wrong, Because like my brother said, it looks like the liberation organizations did not have any plan because we've not arrived. If my brother is going hungry, if my brother's children, like in Zimbabwe today, are not in school, if my brother is homeless, if a pensioner who contributed to the liberation struggle, to the development of this country up to this point is destitute, what advancement is that?
Thank you, Mr. Support.
We need another time to discuss this. Thank you. Oh.
Joseph, we are almost coming to an end, but I know you've come now. So I'll give you maybe 2 minutes to share your thoughts. Elder Joseph?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry I wasn't at the most of the meeting, but I think I understand the context in which things are being discussed. And so I want to place it against the backdrop of what is happening in the Caribbean now, where on Monday and Tuesday we'll have African leaders, both business and political, some of them, will be coming on the island of Grenada, the country, my country, to have some conference with it through the African Export-Import Bank. I've been very troubled because I asked myself, these folks, because I've seen some of them in meetings and so on, how they behave, how they talk. They have no regard for the people on the continent or even for outside the continent. Their concern is mainly themselves and also upholding the structures that give them the opportunity or the privilege. So my question is like, how do we ensure that when such activities are happening, are we able to link and get people to know this is happening? So the world will be, or at least in the West, the attention would be on Grenada on Monday and Tuesday. It is said about 1,300 of them, both from the Caribbean and Africa, and maybe the diaspora, US and so on, have registered to be part of that. And to me, it's part of the continuation of colonialism. And I mean, using the idea of trade, which is, as it is right now, very unfairly structured. For instance, even if trade is developed, the instruments that they use to facilitate the trade still need to be sourced from the developed capitalist world, whether it's the ships, the insurance, and all of that kind of stuff. And who pay for it? The people. So something, and again, my question, I'm hoping I will be disciplined to write something in time before they leave, is to ask the question, what are they doing to ensure that innocent life is not lost trying to reach Europe through the Mediterranean, trying to get a living, trying to get some survival? What are they doing with all the billion, the Dangote and all the rest? What are they doing?
Okay.
So these are the questions I think, I mean, sometimes I get frustrated with it because I don't think we deal with the thing deep enough and what is extremely relevant. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Elder Joseph. Yeah, I'm aware. I think Professor Lumumba told me that there was to be a tour in Caribbean. I think it's part of the team because he told me that they were to move to all parts of Caribbean, probably Grenada, Haiti. I was supposed to be there. I don't know how he lied to me and he left me somewhere here, but it's okay. So I'm really interested in that as well. Today we've come to an end, but today we were looking at how do we manage Africa resources. And the key things have come out that there's an element of youth, a resource of Africa. And I've checked our topic for next week will be on youth empowerment. How do we empower the African youth? So probably to fit in well. But another element is that the resources of Africa are in whose hand? And the answer has been very clear. There's majority in the hands of not Africans, even in Africa. They're in the hands of either foreigners, they're in the hands of multinational companies, they're in the hands of elites who might also be African. And therefore, in our proposition that the resources of Africa must be used in Ubuntu or socialism way, we propose that the resources of Africa must be used for the collective well-being, collective, not for individual well-being. And the question is also very clear. Why is it not for the collective well-being? And the answer goes back to the leadership. And quotes have been made of leaders who say, like Thabo Mbeki, it's us, we. Leaders who have sold our resources, like what Sister Tapo is saying in Zimbabwe. Our daughter of former president owns a lot of resources. In Kenya, the Kenyatta family owns about 500,000 hectares of land, a whole province in Kenya. The freedom fighters are languishing in poverty. The African citizens are too poor, with others extremely rich in the same society. That is a clear sign that we must start by first as Africans fighting for the resources of Africans for the collective well-being of Africa. Because the resources we have castrated the amount of wealth it is enough to make Africa feed ourselves, lighten ourselves, build all the roads needed, and be whatever we want to be. So there's a point here that you're taking home, that we need the right leadership that can then give the right command to nationalize our resources, send away those multinationals, because we have the ability to do what we can, or if not send away, renegotiate those so-called deals and partnerships, because in many countries they've exploited us. So comrades, it is ourselves to reflect again on how do we fight for the resources of our people for ourselves. As Seko Ture says in his book that I'm currently reading, the book called Strategy and Tactics for Revolution, which I'm reading the soft copy now, that we must push for masses. For the capitalist, it's not meant for the mass. The capitalist is meant for individuals. But Africa is not individualistic. Africa is collective. Africa is for the entire people. So wherever we see this, let's ensure that we fight that the element of capitalism must be broken down so that the people of Africa can then use their resources for themselves or for themselves. It's not going to be easy, but it's what must be done. And that must aim that we have a collective, united African approach. So that if Congo is so rich, there's no need for Congolese to enjoy a good life while the Zimbabweans are dying in the next door. If Nigeria is so rich, there's no need for Nigerians to live in trillions, but the next neighbors in Benin on the other side are dying in poverty. Only if we envision a continental Africa where those who have and those who don't have will benefit, for they will use the resources of Africa. For entire Africa without the border, our resources do not know boundaries, and therefore our development and our collective welfare should not know any boundary. So thank you very much, comrades, for this session. And we look forward to look at the youth empowerment, because the youth now is the driving force. How do you put our youth to help us attain what we want as a continent? Without much ado, permit me to say thank you for this session. And because Brother Kwame is not present with us, I'll request Sister Ida to give the thanks remarks as we close this. Sister Ida?
All I can say is thank you all very much. It's been an interesting discussion, and I hope we'll continue it at some other time. Thank you. Good night to you all. Night.
Good
Night,
night.